Back with a new video. In this video, let us discuss about different ways to declare functions. Now, one thing you will hear throughout the round when you get into the language is that JavaScript functions, they are first-class citizens. So, first-class citizens. JavaScript functions. Okay. Now, this means that they can be stored into variables just like values. They can be passed into functions as arguments, and hence the term first-class citizens. Now, the very first way I would like to discuss is using the function declaration way. So let us see that in action. So, function declaration way. So I will define a new function called as subscribe to channel, and then I will pass a channel name as an argument and subscriber name as another argument. Then I will return a template string and will say thanks for subscribing to channel name, and then I will put a comma and then interpolate the subscriber name. So this is what we are doing here is we are dynamically interpolating the values, the variable values that we get here. Now when these arguments will get some values, we will dynamically interpolate them into this template string. Now this will return something because we're using the return keyword. So what I will do is I will collect the result in a variable called as subscription, and I will say subscribe to channel. The channel name I'm passing as the nerdy div, and the subscriber name say Alex. Then I will log the subscription to the console. So I will say console.log subscription. I guess my IntelliSense is not working right now, so let us not worry about that. So I will open my terminal, and here what I will do is okay, so node different ways to declare functions.js, and it says thanks for subscribing to the nerdy div Alex. Okay, so this is the way of declaring functions using the function declaration way. Now let me comment this function and define the same function using the anonymous function way of declaring the function. So what is an anonymous function? Anonymous function is a function that doesn't have a name. So what I can do is I will comment this. First I will copy this, then I will comment this. Just comment these line of code. The entire code will be available on a GitHub repository. The link for that is down below this video. Do check that out. And what I will do here is I will remove the name of the function. So this is how an anonymous function looks like. We are passing in two arguments. One is the channel name, the second argument is subscriber name, separated by commas, and then we are returning the template string by interpolating those variables that we are passing as arguments. Okay, so this is how an anonymous function looks like. So let us comment this as well, and let us move further. Now moving on. So let us comment, okay, so we have commented the code. Now let us see what we have as another way of function declaration of declaring a function. So this is called as function expressions. A function expression is basically a way wherein you store a function as a value inside a variable. So what I will do here is I will take this anonymous function that I just showed you, and I will declare a variable, name it as subscribe to channel, and this variable will work as a placeholder, and this placeholder variable will basically hold our anonymous function into it. So I will uncomment it, and now what I'm doing here is I'm storing this function into this variable name subscribe to channel. So this variable now holds the function, and this function is an anonymous function, as I just told you. So this is what is called as a function expression. Okay, so I will tell you the distinction between function declaration and function expression as well. So this is function expression. Now moving on, a function expression, as I just told you, is a way when you are storing a function as a value. So this is a value that you are storing in a variable called as subscribe to channel. Now this is why we call these functions as first class citizens in the very first place, because what we are doing here is that we are storing the functions as values inside a variable, and then we can pass these variables that are holding the functions as arguments to other functions as well. Wow, this is so cool, isn't it? Well, these functions are also anonymous functions because they do not have a name. Okay, this is an anonymous function and we are storing it, or we are trying to infer it using some variable, but this function in itself doesn't have a name of its own. Okay, we are trying to infer it using this variable, and that is why this itself is an anonymous function. The browsers will infer these functions with the name of variable under which you stored them in. So this is all about function expressions. So whenever you are trying to infer the function expression, you will use the variable in which they are defined under. Now with the name of variable that is holding them. Okay. Now why would you do one way of function expression over the function declaration way of declaring the functions? Now the real difference is how they operate in something called as hoisting. We will discuss about hoisting in a separate video. So let us discuss hoisting a bit briefly. I will define a function in two different ways. The first is the function declaration way, and second is the function expression way. Now with the function declaration way, if we define a function using the function declaration way and invoke the function before the actual definition, it will work fine, but this is not the case with function expression. So let me show you this by some code. I will say function hoisting example function declaration, hoisting example function declaration, and then I will console log a line here, and I will say function declarations are always hoisted at the top of the file. Okay, so this hoisting in case of function declarations will enable us to invoke the function just before the definition of the function as well. So if I try to invoke the function right before the definition of the function declaration, means right before the function, I'm trying to invoke it, as you can see here on line number 22, we are invoking the function and the definition of the function is below line number 22. So should this work or not? So let us try this. Okay, so what is happening? Let us clear the screen. And I will say node. Okay, different ways to declare functions.js, and we are getting the correct output. So this function did run. Okay, so you are invoking the function right before the definition of the function, and it did run function declaration and it spit out function declarations are always hoisted at the top of the file. Okay, so what happened was this function went up above the whole file and was hoisted at the top. So this was actually what was done in case of hoisting, and this happens only for function declarations. It will not work for function expressions. So let me show you that as well. So I will define the very same function. I will say hoisting example function expression, and then I will define a variable, and within which we will store our anonymous function, and then I will log to the console function expressions are not hoisted at the top of the file. So let us see this in action as well. So I will invoke the script, and you can see we are getting an error. So what is the error? It says reference error. Cannot access hoisting example function expression before initialization. So it says we cannot access the function right before the initialization. So in case of function expressions, the definition of the function will not get hoisted at the top. So you cannot invoke it. So this means that function expressions here. Okay, so yes, so function expressions are not hoisted at the top of the file. So this will not go above at the top of the file. Okay, so there is no hoisting in case of function expressions, and that is why the code will not work. So that means the JavaScript code that will run is from top to bottom. Now in case of function expressions, it is unable to get the definition of the function right when it needs it. Okay, so when you are trying to invoke the function expression, it is not able to get this definition that it requires for the invocation to work well, because this definition is right before or right after the invocation, and this will not get hoisted to the top of the file. So this will not work, and therefore what will happen is, in case of function expressions, it is unable to get the definition of the function right when it needs it, whereas this reference error thing will not occur in case of function declarations, because function declarations are always hoisted at the top. And therefore with this concept of hoisting, you will be able to run a function even before the definition of function is seen. And moving on, next up is arrow functions. So I do have a separate video on arrow functions as well. The link for the demystifying arrow functions is down below this video. Now if you are a bit nerdy, do check that out as well after watching this video. But let us cover arrow functions as well in a bit detail. Now arrow functions is a concise way of writing functions, a bit shorter and elegant way of creating the functions, then the function declarations and function expressions. The other benefit is that they do not have their own scope in reference to the this keyword. Now we will discuss about the this keyword in a separate video for sure. First thing you need to understand is that arrow functions are also anonymous functions. What it means that there is no way you can declare them like function declarations, and therefore there is no hoisting in case of arrow functions as well. Now you always have to declare them like function expression way and stick it to a variable. To illustrate this, let us define the same function that we defined above using the arrow function syntax. So I will take the same. I will comment the above code, this one. Let me copy this and comment this, and let us convert this to arrow function. So just omit the function keyword and just put an arrow after the parenthesis. So this is how an arrow functions look like. I will say subscribe to channel and pass in the variable the nerdydev as an argument, and the subscriber name again Alex. Again, this will return us a template string which gets resolved finally, and let us store the result in a variable called as subscription. Let us try logging the subscription to the console. And let me comment this line of code for the function expression, because this will not work as I told you. And let us try running the script. I will say no different ways to declare the functions.js, and you can say this does work well. Okay, so it says thanks for subscribing to the nerdydev Alex, and this is about arrow functions. Now we can make it look a little bit more elegant. So let us try that as well. Now, as I told you, arrow functions is a concise way of writing your functions. So you can make it a bit shorter and elegant than how your function declarations and function expressions currently look. And the other benefit just I told you that was this keyword. So they do not have their own scope in reference to this keyword. Now moving on, what you can do is okay, so let me tell you one thing more. If we try to return from line number 34 and again put a line of return and say hello, now this line of code which you are seeing at line number 35 is a return statement and it's unreachable code. So once you invoke the function subscribe to channel and you are trying to return from the line number 34, the execution will not go to line number 35 because we are directly returning from line number 34. So as you can see, I'm hovering over this line and it says unreachable code detected. So it will never get executed and hence we will return directly from line number 34. So this is one thing I wanted to tell you about functions. So let me comment the return statement here. Only one return statement is allowed in your functions. So this was all about arrow functions and an explicit return, as you can see here. Now let me tell you about the implicit way of returning from a function. Now since arrow functions are supposed to be concise, we can even omit the return keyword. Okay, we can even omit this return keyword. So let us see that for above function. What I will do is I will copy this function and I will rename it. So subscribe to channel, I will say, let me be a little bit more precise with the naming of the functions. So I will say subscribe to channel, arrow function way, arrow function, and here I will say arrow function with implicit return. So where we will not be specifying the return keyword and we will be returning directly. So what I will do is first I will omit these curly braces, and since we are having a single line of code, we can omit the return keyword as well. Let me save this. And if I try to invoke the function now by saying subscribe to channel arrow function with implicit return, such a long name, pass the arguments the nerdy div. Okay, and I will say Christina. So let us try the code. I will run the file. Okay, subscribe to channel. So arrow function, just arrow function here. Okay, so let me try the code again. With implicit return is not defined. Subscribe to channel arrow function with implicit return. So let me copy this. I'll return it here. Okay, so it was return. It is return, not return. And now let us run the code and it does work fine. So it says thanks for subscribing to the nerdy div, Christina, and this is how we can work with implicit return in case of arrow functions. Now if we have a single argument in case of arrow functions, we can even omit the parenthesis which holds the argument. So let us see a case for that as well. So what I will do is I will define a new function and name it as play game. So const play game, I will pass an argument of gamer and I will not be using the parentheses. I am omitting them, just the variable that is supposed to be passed as an argument to this function. And from here I will log to the console that console.log gamer is playing, say Counter-Strike. and then I will say play game, and I will pass the name of the gamer, say Rishi, and let us try the code now. I will run the file and it will work fine. So it says Rishi is playing Counter-Strike. Okay. So this was about a arrow function with a single argument where you can omit your parenthesis. Now moving on, let me see if we have some more things to cover. So yes, so you can see in this way we do have the implicit return. We do not have the explicit return keyword here, and we are even omitting the curly braces here. So it is quite interesting. But when you have more than 2 parameters in your function, then even in this case of arrow functions, a parenthesis is must to have. So let me show you with an example. So I will do what? Suppose we want to multiply two numbers, and in this case when we are taking two numbers, you cannot omit the parenthesis, so number 1 and number 2, but you can do an implicit return here. We are not using the return keyword, as you can see. We are just saying number 1 into number 2. So this is the flexibility of functional programming. So I will say console.log multiply two numbers 12 and 2. So let me try running this, and the result should be 24. So yes, we are getting 24 as the result. So you can see arrow functions with more than one parameter. In that case, you do require a parenthesis for your arguments.